Okay, so I have not scheduled any actual lives for like the next couple weeks because everybody's going to be super busy with elections. But one of the things that I keep talking about with people, like that keeps coming up in conversation, is climate action and the Green New Deal. And um, there's so much disinformation out there that it like drives me nutty, batty. So anyway, so I thought that when I was talking with some people, I realized that it had been a while since I had actually went through and read the resolution, like not super long, but a couple months. And so since I was having so many conversations with other people about the Green New Deal and climate action, I thought that it would be a good idea to come back through here or go back through and read it. And then I thought maybe other people are interested in having a discussion or reading along with it. So I just figured that I would go live and that way it's recorded. So if you have time to like join now and go over it, then awesome. Otherwise, maybe like save the video or watch it later if you're interested, or you can just get the link and go read it through it yourself. But I started back in 2017 when they were talking about repealing and replacing the ACA. I decided that I wanted to start reading through legislation myself. Hi, Deb. Happy Tuesday. That I wanted to start reading through legislation myself so that just because I feel like whenever you get it from a partisan source or, you know, that they kind of have like a jaded or a tilted view on it. And I just wanted to, I think people are capable of reading through it themselves, doing appropriate nonpartisan research, and then making the best decisions for their families. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that we can pull up the bill. So if you're looking for the legislation, let me make sure this pulled up. Can you see it? Can you hear me? Okay, great. So if you're looking through the legislation or looking for legislation, then your go-to website is going to be congress.gov. If you go there, then they have search, so you can search for different things or, you know, look for whatever legislation you want. So I have gone there and pulled up, it's House Resolution 109. This is one of the things that I try to point out to folks because everybody already has so many like preconceptions about what will happen if the Green New Deal is passed. But in all actuality, the Green New Deal is not legislation. It is a resolution. Okay. So what that means is that they're basically just making a resolution to work on these issues. So and it's 14 pages, so it's not like super long to look through. So here you're going to see it's in the House of Representatives. You're going to see when it was entered, and then you'll see the representatives that are signed on to the bill, leading with the representative that kind of led the effort or submitted it. And in this case, that is AOC, which I think makes people nervous in and of itself. But that's why I think it's important to let folks know that you actually can go through and see what the Green New Deal is and what that resolution is. So see right here, you see resolution recognizing the duty of the federal government to create a Green New Deal. So that is literally all this is it's just the government saying, hey, we recognize these things. It's Congress saying, hey, we recognize these things and you know what we need to work on. I kind of think of it as like getting on, you know, common ground, you know, finding that goal so that then legislation could be presented to address that and work on those goals. So, sorry, I gotta switch screens here. Okay. So the beginning part of it is, you know, it discusses the special report on global warming by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change and the November 2018 Fourth National Climate Assessment Report. So basically, these are studies that were completed, and this section right here discusses what those studies found. So we found that human activity is the dominant cause of observed climate change over the past century. Okay, it's just a fact, it's not an opinion. Changing climate is causing sea levels to rise and an increase in wildfires, severe storms, droughts, and other extreme weather events. Again, this is fact. Global warming at above 2 degrees Celsius beyond pre-industrial levels will cause mass migration from the regions most affected by climate change. I think that we already are seeing migration, especially, one of the reasons that folks are coming from Central America in larger numbers is because of climate change. A lot of them cannot continue to produce their coffee, which is their main crops, because of climate change. So I don't even know what is that, more than 5, it'd be quadrant. Let me ask my 16-year-old, Haley. So what's his number? Is that quadrillion? 500 quadrillion? Is that what that would be? Because there's 3, 6. No, it'd be 1,000, million, billion, quadrillion, right? Or does it go trillion? Quadrillion? So this 500 billion. I don't know. It's a lot of zeros. Anywho, so more than 500 billion. Yeah, she's right. I'm adding a zero. In lost annual economic output in the United States by the year 2100, wildfires that by 2050 will annually burn at least twice as much. We're already seeing, increase in wildfires, a loss of more than 99% of coral reefs on Earth. This is something we've been learning about for a while. More than 350 million more people to be exposed globally to deadly heat stress by 2050, and a risk of damage to, oh my God, there's all the zeros. What is it? 1 billion of public infrastructure and coastal real estate in the United States, and global temperatures must be kept below 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrialized levels. So you can see that this is stating what was found, what we know about climate change and the effects. Okay, so then it talks about, whereas the United States has historically been responsible for a disproportionate amount of greenhouse gas emissions, which we know, and that's also one of the concerns that people that disagree with the Green New Deal will talk about, is they'll say, well, even if the U.S. does something, it's a worldwide thing, so, but this is why it's important for us to do something, is because we are responsible for a disproportionate amount of greenhouse gases. And we need to work on being leaders in climate action because of that. And that's basically what that says, is because we've been a part of it, the United States must take a leading role in reducing emissions through economic transformation. Whereas the United States is currently experiencing several related crises, with life expectancy declining, while basic needs such as clean air, clean water, healthy food, adequate healthcare, housing, transportation, and education are inaccessible to a significant portion of the United States population. Again, that's a fact. We do have a significant portion of the population that are in need of these things. A 4-decade trend of wage stagnation, deindustrialization, and anti-labor policies that has led to hourly wages overall stagnant since the 1970s. That's a fact. The 3rd worst level of socioeconomic mobility in the developed world before the Great Recession, erosion to the earning and bargaining power of workers in the United States, and inadequate resources for public sector workers to confront challenges of climate change at local, state, and federal levels. So you can see here is where they're kind of going into stating some of the problems that we would be wanting to work to address. One of those things is the greatest income inequality since the 1920s, with the top 1% of earners accruing 91% of gains in the first few years of economic recovery after the Great Recession, a large racial wealth divide amounting to a difference of 20 times more wealth between the average white family and the average black family, and gender earnings gap that results in women earning approximately 80% as much as the men in the median. Again, all of this is just stated facts based off of research. So there's no policy, like we're on page 4, and there's no policy, there's no, like literally if this passed so far, absolutely nothing would change. It's just saying, this is the studies that we took, this is what we resulted in, this is how our economy is doing, these are some facts that we want to work to address. Continuing on, whereas climate change, pollution, and environmental destruction have exacerbated systemic racial, regional, social, environmental, and economic injustices, referred to in this preamble as systemic injustices, by disproportionately affecting indigenous peoples, communities of color, migrant communities, deindustrialized communities, depopulated rural communities, the poor, low-income workers, women, the elderly, the unhoused, people with disabilities, and youth, referred to in this preamble as frontline and vulnerable communities. So basically what this is saying is that it's recognizing, validating, acknowledging the fact that climate change is going to harm some of our more marginalized communities, and that it will exacerbate systemic racism that we see. Whereas climate change constitutes a direct threat to the national security of the United States by impacting the economic, environmental, and social stability of countries and communities around the world, and by acting as a threat multiplier. So we're just listing the reasons that we need to address the problems that have been stated. Whereas the federal government led mobilizations during World War II and the New Deal created the greatest middle class that the United States has ever seen, but many members of frontline and vulnerable communities were excluded from many of the economic and societal benefits of those mobilizations. So all that's saying is that we saw through government-led mobilizations after World War II, when the Green New Deal was created, that it had a strong impact on middle class families. However, it kind of left behind some of those marginalized communities. Whereas the House of Representatives recognizes that a new national, social, industrial, and economic mobilization on a scale not seen since World War II in the Green New Deal era is a historic opportunity to create millions of good high-wage jobs in the United States. So that's something that they want to use these efforts to do, is to create millions of good high-wage paying jobs, provide unprecedented levels of prosperity and economic security for all people of the United States. That just means we want to make sure that people have their basic needs met and that they're able to, prosper here in our country, and to counteract systemic injustices. So what we're saying is we want to make sure that we mobilize in a way that boosts working class, middle class families, but also low income families, communities of colors, disabled communities, those more marginalized communities as well. And that includes rural communities. So, so that's basically what they're saying to start. They're saying, okay, so here's the study, here's the problems that we identified from the study. Here's some of the things that we want to recognize and make sure that we're working on as we move forward. And so be it resolved that it is the sense of the House of Representatives, because they say the House because that's where the bill's at. It's in the House, then it has to go through the Senate, go through the whole process. But so what they're saying is that they believe that it's the House of Representatives that it is the duty of the federal government to create a Green New Deal, to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions through a fair and just transition for all communities and workers, to create millions of good high-wage jobs and ensure prosperity and economic security for all people of the United States, to invest in the infrastructure and industry of the United States to sustainably meet the challenges of the 21st century. That should be something that really almost everyone should agree on, because we've been talking about for a very long time how we need to put infrastructure into the U.S. and how good that would be for us, and how many jobs it would create and all that. So, and then to secure for all people of the United States for generations to come. This is what we want for everyone in the U.S. That's what this resolution is saying, that we want to make, we want to work towards legislation and policy that would ensure that these things are provided to all the United States people for generations to come. So that's clean air and water, right? We all want clean air and water. Climate and community resiliency. We want our communities to thrive. We want our climate to be here in a way that we can live. We want healthy food, access to nature, and a sustainable environment. And to, along with fulfilling those basic needs, we need to promote justice and equity by stopping current, preventing future, and repairing historic oppressions of Indigenous peoples, communities of colors, migrant communities, deindustrialized communities, depopulated rural communities, the poor, low-income workers, women, the elderly, the unhoused, people with disabilities, and youth. Again, they're just identifying that there have been communities that have been negatively impacted or left behind while we've moved forward in policy before. And we want to make sure that as we move forward in policy to address climate change, that we are thinking about those people. So it's intentionally inclusive way to address climate action. And so the goals described through what we just read up there, referred to in this resolution as the Green New Deal goals, should be accomplished through a 10-year national mobilization, referred to in this resolution as a Green New Deal mobilization that will require the following goals and projects. So here's where we get into a list of kind of what the goals are, and I think that here's also where some of the concern comes from. So, okay, so we're halfway through, guys. We're halfway through. I know it's long. If you have questions or comments or anything, I do have the thing on the side here, so I can see that if anybody wants to join in. I'm also going to try, part of me going over this was because I wanted to do a clip where it was just kind of shorter and more abbreviated for folks. Oh shoot, I just messed up my view. And then, yeah, but I figured if I was doing it, I'd do it with you guys. Okay, so building resiliency against climate change related disasters, such as extreme weather, which would be fantastic here in Nebraska. We saw the flooding, we saw the freezing, you know, our farmers lost a lot and lots of money. Farmers went into bankruptcy, like it was hard on us. So we want to definitely build resiliency against that, right? Including by leveraging funding and providing investments for community-defined projects and strategies. So that basically just says, you know, some money, some resources should be allotted to community-defined projects and strategies that have a goal of assisting with extreme weather. Repairing and upgrading the infrastructure in the United States, which is something that I have not heard anybody on any side of the political spectrum argue. So we want to upgrade the infrastructure by eliminating pollution and greenhouse gas emissions as much as technologically feasible. So that just means that we know that greenhouse gas emissions contribute to climate change. So we want to make sure that we are reducing that as much as we can. By guaranteeing universal access to clean water, that just means, hey, if you live in America, you have access to clean water. Most of us, I think, grew up thinking we already had that, but we know that there are some areas that don't have access to clean drinking water. And we also know that some of the things that we're doing right now is polluting and contributing to polluted water. So we definitely want clean water, right? We should all be able to agree on that. By reducing the risk posed by climate impacts and by ensuring that any infrastructure bill considered by Congress addresses climate change. So what that means is that if there's any kind of infrastructure legislation that goes through Congress, there's just going to be an eye on climate change. So like, are we setting those up in a way that helps us with climate action, or are we setting up in a way where we're not paying any attention and it's going to further harm our goal of taking climate action? Meeting 100% of the power demand in the United States through clean, renewable, and zero-emission energy sources, including by dramatically expanding and upgrading renewable power sources and by deploying new capacity. So that basically just says, hey, we're going to try to switch, we want to switch, the goal would be to switch completely over to clean energy. So I think that sometimes that's where folks get stuck on this as well, is because then they take that as like the use of fossil fuels is going to go away tomorrow and we are not going to be able to power our cities. But it says right here that we want to meet 100% of power demand. So it's not like we'd just be taking it away, we'd be moving over to it. And the technology is there. So we just need the funding and we need the mobilization to get that out, which would create jobs, right? Building or upgrading to, just a second, what's up, baby? Okay, in a little bit, you gotta wait. No, you can't go out there without me. Just wait a little bit, baby. No, let mommy finish this and then we can go out in the backyard. Okay. Building or upgrading to energy efficient, distributed, and smart power grids and ensuring affordable access to electricity, upgrading all existing buildings in the United States and building new buildings to achieve maximum energy efficiency, water efficiency, safety, affordability, comfort, and durability, including through electrification, spurring massive growth in clean manufacturing in the United States and removing pollution and greenhouse gas emissions from manufacturing and industry as much as technologically feasible, including by expanding renewable energy manufacturing and investing in existing manufacturing and industry. Okay, so that is all basically just about expanding clean energy. It doesn't say how that gets done. It doesn't say, I mean, it just says this is something we need to move towards. That's why when people are like, oh, it would, you know, do this and this and that, I'm like, well, hold on a minute. All this is a goal. It's saying we need to move over to clean energy. How we do that would still have yet to be discussed. And then G, working collaboratively with farmers and ranchers in the United States to remove pollution and greenhouse gas emissions from the agricultural sector as much as technologically feasible, including by supporting family farming, okay, which I think is a good thing, and I think that most Nebraskans think that this is a good thing, is to support the family farming. 2, by investing in sustainable farming and land use practices that increase soil health. So when I read this, when we're talking about sustainable practices that increase soil health, then we're talking about regenerative agriculture and possibly moving over to regenerative agriculture. But it doesn't specifically say that. Again, that's something that would have to be legislated, is how do we do that? How do we move over to it? By building a more sustainable food system that ensures universal access to healthy foods. So that's good, right? Because our farmers want to be growing good, healthy foods. We all want to be nourished. Right now, we're seeing from some of the farming practices that our nutrition levels in food are going down. So we want to make sure that our food is growing in a nutritious way, right? So overall transportation systems in the United States to remove pollution and greenhouse gas emissions from the transportation sector as much as technically feasible, including through investment in zero emission vehicle infrastructure and manufacturing, clean, affordable, and accessible public transit, and a high-speed rail. So basically, we're just thinking of cleaner ways of transportation. We're thinking of expanding on the technology and the information that we have now so that transportation is healthier for our climate. Again, not saying exactly, you know. Okay, so mitigating and managing the long-term adverse health, economic, and other effects of pollution and climate change. I'll be done faster if you stop interrupting. Okay. mitigating and managing the long-term adverse health, economic, and other effects of pollution and climate change, including by providing funding for community-defined projects and strategies. So again, that's just saying we want to find ways to fund community strategies. Removing greenhouse gases from the atmosphere and reducing pollution by restoring natural ecosystems through proven low-tech solutions that increase soil carbon storage, such as land preservation and afforestation. So, and again, that's talking about soil health. And if we switch over to agriculture or a style of farming that focuses on soil health and like regenerative agriculture, can actually pull all of that CO2 into the ground, for storage and turn it into, what's needed. It's photosynthesis, it's all stuff that I learned in 7th grade science class in Grant, Nebraska. So restoring and protecting threatened, endangered, and fragile ecosystems through locally appropriate and science-based projects that enhance biodiversity and support climate resiliency, cleaning up existing hazardous waste and abandoned sites, ensuring the economic level. Hey, can you be a little quieter, please? Thanks. Cleaning up existing hazardous waste and abandoned sites, ensuring economic development and sustainability of those sites, identifying other emission and pollution sources and creating solutions to remove them, and promoting the international exchange of technology, expertise, products, funding, and services with the aim of making the United States the international leader on climate action and to help other countries achieve a Green New Deal as well. A Green New Deal must be developed through transparent and inclusive consultation, collaboration, and partnership with frontline and vulnerable communities, labor unions, worker cooperatives, civil society groups, academia, and businesses. That right there, that's just saying we're going to develop this Green New Deal that has not been developed yet. This is just an agreement to work towards it. But if this were passed, then we could start working on the legislation and the agreement. And it says right in this resolution that while we do that, we will be sure to include and protect those marginalized communities that have been left out previously, and that includes rural America. So to achieve the Green New Deal goals and mobilization, a Green New Deal will require the following goals and projects. Providing and leveraging in a way that ensures that the public receives appropriate ownership stakes and returns on investment, adequate capital, including through the community grants, public banks, and other financing, technical expertise, supporting policies, and other forms of assistance to communities, organizations, federal, state, and local government agencies and businesses working on the Green New Deal mobilization. Ensuring the federal government takes into account the complete environmental and social costs and impacts of emissions through existing laws, new policies and programs, and ensuring that the frontline and vulnerable communities shall not be adversely affected. So this basically just means that while we're doing this, we're going to look at the impact of our existing laws, we're going to look at what the impact of new and existing policies and programs would be, and we're going to ensure that those vulnerable communities are not overlooked again. Providing resources, training, high quality education, including higher education to all people of the United States with a focus on frontline and vulnerable communities so that all people of the United States may be full and equal participants in the Green New Deal mobilization. So that just means, hey, we're going to work and make sure that everybody has access to the education that they need in order to make sure that the American people are full and equal participants in this movement on the mobilization for climate action. Making public investments in the research and development of new, clean, and renewable energy technologies and industries, directing investments to spur economic development, deepening and diversifying industry and business in local and regional economies, and build wealth and community ownership, while prioritizing high-quality job creation and economic, social, and environmental benefits in frontline and vulnerable communities and deindustrialized communities that may otherwise struggle with the transition away from greenhouse gas gas-intensive industries. So basically what they're saying is we're going to make sure that the people that are struggling with that transition get the help that they need. Ensuring the use of democratic and participatory processes that are inclusive and led by frontline and vulnerable communities and workers to plan, implement, and administer the Green New Deal mobilization at the local level. So that basically just means that we want to make sure that we're listening to the hands of the people where it's impacted and affects most, and make sure that the process is transparent and inclusive to all Americans, including rural America. So, ensuring that the Green New Deal mobilization creates high quality union jobs that pay prevailing wages, hire local workers, offers training and advancement opportunities, and guarantees wage and benefit parity for workers affected by the transition. So, so we want to make sure that's basically just a statement acknowledging that with this will come job loss, because we do have to kind of stop doing some of the things that we have been doing that have been impacting us and our climate. But we don't want to just forget about those people or pretend like that's not a thing. We want to make sure that we put the effort and energy we need into ensuring that those workers can transition successfully. Guaranteeing a job with a family sustaining wage, adequate family and medical leave, paid vacations, and retirement security to all people of the United States. Again, this is just saying that families should have a decent wage. Doesn't say what that wage is or how we get there. It says adequate family and medical leave. It doesn't even specifically define out what that is, right? So there's still legislation that would have to be developed around that. Paid vacation, retirement security, same thing. It's just saying, if people are working, they should be able to live. And we also need adequate family and medical leave. Okay, so strengthening and protecting the right of all workers to organize, unionize, and collectively bargain free and coercion, free of coercion, intimidation, and harassment. Strengthening and enforcing labor, workplace health and safety, anti-discrimination, and wage and hour standards across employers, industries, and sectors, enacting and enforcing trade rules, procurement standards, and border adjustments with strong labor and environmental protections to stop the transfer of jobs and pollution overseas and to grow domestic manufacturing in the United States. Ensuring that public lands, waters, and oceans are protected and that eminent domain is not abused. Obtaining the free, prior, and informed consent of Indigenous peoples for all decisions that affect Indigenous peoples and their traditional territories, honoring all treaties and agreements with Indigenous peoples, and protecting and enforcing the sovereignty and land rights of Indigenous peoples, which is really something we should be doing anyway, right? Because they're a sovereign nation. So in the United States, if we consider them a sovereign nation, then making sure that we have their informed consent to do anything that affects them makes sense, right? Ensuring a commercial environment where every business person is free from unfair competition and domination by domestic or international monopolies, right? We do that in America, right? We're supposed to have protections from monopolies and things like that, and provide all people of the United States with high quality health care, affordable, safe, and adequate housing, economic security, and clean water, clean air, healthy and affordable food, and access to nature. So again, it's just saying that when you work through these things, one of the goals is to ensure that that those of us residing in the United States have access to our basic needs, right? And that's it. That's the resolution. So I guess the reason I keep reading through it and want folks to take a look at it themselves is because, like, where in there does it say that we're going to get rid of cows? Where in there does it say that we're going to get rid of meat? Where in there is there a plan that it's enough to even say how much this would cost? Like, this is literally just a resolution. It's just a resolution that says, hey, let's get on the same page. These are the studies. And everybody needs their, stop sharing this, and everybody needs their basic needs met. So I really feel like it's only 14 pages. It's only 14 pages. And I really feel like if we could get the accurate information out there and start fighting back on all of the disinformation, I know when I'm speaking to friends and family out west, a lot of it is, about ending cows and stop eating meats. You see the Don Bacon ads right now attacking Cara, saying she supports the Green New Deal and she's never going to let you eat bacon. I can reassure you that as a Nebraskan, born and raised, I will never get rid of my steak and potatoes. We just need to be able to do it in a way that isn't killing our environment at the same time, and in a humane way, and treat the animals humanely. So, anyway, yeah. So for those of you that watched a little bit or will watch later or will go off and look at it yourself, I'll make sure to put a link that will take you directly to the legislation. I just think that if we could all take a little bit of time, read through this 14-page thing, so that way when we're speaking to people about the Green New Deal, we can be accurate about what it is and what it isn't. Because right now, even half the Democrats are acting like if we passed a resolution, there'd be some kind of major change, and there would literally be no change. Absolutely nothing would change other than our Congress would have come to an agreement that they are going to work on climate action with an eye on social and economic justice, which I think is fantastic based off of science and studies and research. So, all right. Thanks for hanging in there with me. You all have a great day.